Hi, it's me, and welcome to another new target extraction overview for Limbus Company. The September 19th, 2024 update has brought what I am dubbing the Devyat Days extraction, bringing with it a brand new faction ID for Rodion from the Devyat Association, as well as a third Bygone Days ego, this time a TETH ego for Ishmael. Despite the first two Bygone Days being Season 4 exclusive, both of these new pieces of equipment are for standard fare extractions, meaning you will always be able to get them from the dispensary should you so choose. Now, without any further delay, let's jump into the new ID and ego to see what they excel at. We can't exactly discuss Devyat Association North Section 3 Rodia's kit without first discussing the main gimmick of the Devyat Association, Courier Trunk. This is a new status effect that starts at 0, but increases by 3 on every turn start, including the first turn of battle. Courier Trunk gives various effects based on how many you have. At 10 or more, Rodion's minimum and maximum speed increase by 1, tying her with the fastest natural speed range in the game of 5 to 8. At 20 or more, she gains 1 Clash power-up and 1 Slash damage up every turn. However, at 30 or more, using a skill causes her to take damage equal to a third of the stack in the percentage of your max HP, and a third of the stack in SP lost. It also deals half of the stack in HP and SP damage at turn end, meaning that using one skill while at 30 plus Courier Trunk will guaranteed cost her 25% of her max HP and 25 SP by the end of the turn at minimum. There's only one way to reduce your Courier Trunk, and that's by activating Strategic R&R mode. Activating Strategic R&R mode causes Rodia to leave the battlefield entirely, cutting her Courier Trunk in half, removing all negative status effects from her, and resetting her SP to 0 if it happens to be below 0. It also triggers even if Rodia is staggered, so don't worry about her taking damage the turn it's activated. In chain battles, this puts Rodia to the back of the deployment order and substitutes the next unit in the deployment order, giving the substituted unit her skill slots. In other battles, Rodia is just gone from the fight, but she does still give her skill slots to your other units. If her passive is activated, this also gives 1 Clash power-up to 2 allies, prioritizing substituted units, but then going in deployment order, and this can last up to 3 turns total. The issue with this ability is that Devyat Rodion is an insanely good unit for dealing damage, and removing her from the fight isn't exactly good for your fight speed. This means she's actually best in shorter fights where her Courier Trunk doesn't have long enough to cause her to self-destruct. Strategic R&R mode is accessed through Devyat Rodion's counter. Well, not this one. Instead, you probably won't ever want to activate her counter when at less than 15 Courier Trunk, despite the fact that it gives a good amount of shield to her. You know what else gives her shield? Her passive, which gives her up to 20% of her max HP as shield if her speed is 6 or higher or if she has haste. Yeah, this ID is able to gain a lot of haste with her skills, making her incredibly fast and incredibly bulky at the same time. If activated at 15 or more Courier Trunk, you use Strategic Time Off instead, which is exactly the same, except instead of gaining some Courier Trunk, it instead triggers Strategic R&R mode. Again, activating this isn't really preferable despite the fact that it delays Courier Trunk from blowing her up, but honestly, her damage is so high that it's better to try and support her by keeping her HP up using Ego. Decay Knife is a 3-11 rolling / lust skill with 2 coins that can become a 3-15 with enough Courier Trunk or enemy Rupture. Every one of Rodia's skills has an on-use effect that triggers if the enemy has 15 plus Rupture and 3 plus Rupture count. In this case, it stops her from inflicting Rupture with the skill, but doesn't consume Rupture count when hitting the enemy, not that 3 Rupture potency will be missed at that point. All of her skills, save for her skill 3, also give 1 to 3 Courier Trunk through their effects, with bonus Courier Trunk being given if you're below 15, which gives Rodia a roughly 7-turn timer before Courier Trunk starts to eat away at her health, provided she only has 1 skill slot for the fight. Gadget Reveal is a 4-16 rolling / wrath skill with 3 coins that can become up to a 4-22 with enough Courier Trunk or enemy Rupture. Like skill 1, it doesn't consume any enemy Rupture if they have enough potency and count. This skill gives haste, which will enable her passive to give her a bunch of shield and make her regularly one of the fastest units in most team setups. It also inflicts up to 6 defense level down, which, when combined with a high speed, helps out damage about as much as 1.5 Fragile would. Her skills that aren't her skill 1 also deal more damage for every Courier Trunk you have, in this case capping at 40% more damage with 20 Trunk. I Trust You Polu is a 5 to 17 rolling / gluttony skill with 3 coins that can become a 5 to 23 under the optimal conditions. Its damage bonus caps at 80% with 20 courier trunk, and instead of preventing rupture count consumption, using it when an enemy has enough rupture will reuse the final coin of the skill, a coin that deals 25% more damage with 15 or more courier trunk. The second coin can easily inflict up to 5 rupture count, making this skill surprisingly count positive. It's notably also the only skill in her kit that doesn't give her any courier trunk. Also, while a good Rupture unit on her own, her support passive giving 1 clash power to any skill that inflicts Rupture is very strong for a support passive, so even if you don't want to bring her, you'll still probably want her for her passive if you like to use a Rupture team. Speaking of support passives, she has the highest HP of any Rupture ID that you would want to use in a Rupture team, aside from 7 Otis, meaning Lobotomy Ego Red Sheet Sinclair's support passive will always hit her provided she hasn't taken any damage. Since she only doesn't inflict Rupture with her own skill effects, having 8 Talismans still allows her to inflict 8 Rupture potency per hit, and simultaneously stops her from consuming count entirely with her weaker skills. There are 2 major team setups that Devyat Rodion has a good spot in. The first is the more obvious of the 2, and probably the more beneficial overall. A full Rupture team with IDs suited to inflicting Rupture count. All the regulars work well here, from W Corp Yisang, 7 Heathcliff, Faust, and Otis, Lantern Dawn, and especially Red Sheet Sinclair. This works especially well since it has a good bunch of ego to keep Rodia's HP high to counteract Courier Trunk taking it away from her. Fluid Sac and Lantern are the most important in this regard, but any healing ego will help her out immensely. The other team takes advantage of the fact that Devyat Rodion is an amazing generalist ID, and that's any team aiming to take advantage of Lust Resonance. Ring Yisang, Enfaust, Sync Don Quixote, and Lobotomy Ego Ryoshu all work incredibly well with her, and Enfaust specifically helps counteract Courier Trunk's SP loss. The biggest downside to this ID in general is that she's really bad at fueling her own ego with the exception of Sanguine Desire, which isn't very good on this ID to begin with. However, any ego that requires both Lust and Wrath will be very well supported by this ID. Up next, we have Bygone Days Ishmael, a TETH ego that I would love to jump right into, but it has a new status effect to go over called the Uninvited. The Uninvited is a very simple effect. It has a max value of 2, causes a target to take up to 10% more damage while they have sinking, which effectively makes it 1 fragile, and if an enemy with the Uninvited is defeated, the attacker recovers 3 SP and a random other enemy gains 2 of the Uninvited. It then decreases by 1 at the end of every turn. This status effect isn't going to be the primary reason you use this ego, and should be viewed as Curse is. It's helpful, but not something you want to focus on entirely. What it does do, however, is allow this ego's passive to function. Ishmael gains 1 clash power against any enemy who has the Uninvited, Echoes of the Manor, or Ruin, making her more consistent overall. Once per turn, an ally heals 5 SP when Ishmael hits an enemy with any of those statuses as well. While it's not a major SP boost, it can still be very helpful if one of your team members is having a hard time getting started in an encounter. Bygone Days is a 17 to 26 rolling Gloom / ego with 1 attack weight. The attack weight increases by 1 if used with 4+ resonance, and increases by 1 more if that resonance was Gloom. Using this ego inflicts all targets with 3 sinking count, 2 curse, and 2 of the Uninvited on hit, plus will also inflict 1 same turn Gloom Fragility with 4+ Gloom Resonance. It also provides up to 30% of max HP healing for 2 allies who need it the most, though you'll need to have 4+ Gloom Resonance, and the main target needs to have 30 combined sinking potency and count to get the maximum benefits from this effect. This is the single best healing TETH ego in the game as of its release, but the majority of its benefit will likely shine only in a sinking team. That being said, any team that fuels this ego except a burn team will probably want this as an option just for its general utility. The Corrosion does everything that the Awakening does, but with a few additions. Firstly, its attack weight is now 3 by default, but it doesn't gain any weight via Resonance. Instead, you heal an additional ally by default, and 4+ Resonance heals a 4th ally, with Gloom Resonance giving a 5% bonus to the healing, though the cap for the healing is only 20% instead of 30%. It inflicts 1 Gloom Fragility for every 3 Gloom Resonance, up to a maximum of 2 to every target, in addition to inflicting 2 Echoes of the Manor next turn. Manual access to Echoes of the Manor without the need for a specific ID is an incredibly valuable resource, and considering that this is Ishmael's first sinking ego, this makes a corrosion one of the most useful utilities for a sinking team. None of Ishmael's IDs perfectly fuel Bygone Days, but any of her 3 sinking-oriented IDs will find success with it. Muller fuels the sloth needed and is the best of the 3 for sinking, Reindeer is the best at reaching the high gloom needed, and Butler is a decent substitute who has the best average speed to make use of the gloom fragility infliction. This ego works best in a sinking team because it can take full advantage of Echoes of the Manor and the Uninvited. Specifically, Butler Faust is one of the best units due to her decent lust generation, something most sinking IDs struggle with, and an increased sinking infliction against targets who already have Echoes of the Manor. Wild Hunt Heathcliff is another great ally due to his ability to inflict ruin on several enemies, making it sure that Ishmael's passive can get its full benefits at all times. Edgar Family Heir Gregor and Wuthering Heights Butler Otis are also good units to support this ego since they have lust skills and easy access to gloom generation. The last unit that this ego helps to an absurd degree is Ring Pointillist student Yi Sang. He perfectly fuels this ego despite not being on the sinner who uses it, and Bygone Days inflicts enough different types of debuffs to guarantee rerolls with Yi Sang's skill too. While he isn't a staple of sinking, he can inflict it decently well a good amount of the time, and has great sin affinities for the team overall. And that's about all I have to say about the Devyat Days banner for Limbus Company. Thank you all for watching, I hope you found this helpful or entertaining. If you want to borrow my IDs, I have both of these at the maximum possible level right now, so feel free to add me if you want to test them out before you roll for them. I hope you all have a great rest of your day, and I hope to see you all later.